I bought my canoe on the Jefferson River, so naturally, that's where I launched from. My brother and I made quick work of the 44 miles to Three Forks, Montana, where we started on the Missouri River. That night, we paddled beside the Burlington Northern Santa Fe line and found a quiet meadow opposite of the tracks on the side of the river on which we could camp. This spot is public land, but so is everything else all the way up to the high water mark, at least in the state of Montana. We wanted to make full use of the daylight, so we were on the river to enjoy the early sunrise. Also, both of us were excited to be paddling an actual river instead of the waters of the Jefferson, which are so low. It's basically a creek right now, and we had to hike so much of that river that now we were excited to be somewhere we could paddle for most of the day. In the first part of the day, we enjoyed a pretty stout current because we were just downstream of the Gallatin, Madison, and Jefferson rivers and were being pushed along by their waters. But the further the day went on, the closer we got to Toston Dam and the less current we enjoyed, as we had less elevation to drop and the dam was blocking all the current from flowing. We took out at the boat launch right before the dam on a route that I had scouted out ahead of time using digital maps to portage around it. It was only 0.6 miles and kind of exciting to get on our feet for a little bit. Because the grade was easy, downhill of course as we were going downriver, and it was on a gravel road, we really had no trouble doing it. This time I invested in some heavy-duty wheels. They advertise 450-pound load capacity, and I only have to take one trip. Trying to avoid that. and all that. We still had to walk the canoe when things got shallow, and they did quite a bit after the dam, but not nearly as much as in the Jefferson. Plus, if we were able to shoot the rapids, if it was deep enough we wouldn't hit the bottom of the canoe, we made pretty good time. We took lunch in the shade. As is our habit, the bridges have been the biggest source of shade because Montana is foreign to trees, apparently. And we charged the solar panel in the sunshine while we went. We had enough time to get to Townsend originally, but I lingered for too long underneath the bridge, so we had to hustle to get there in time for the Sunday evening mass. And a resupply from Bob's Supermarket for the stretch from here all the way up to Three Forks.
So, took a little long at our lunch break. And right now, we're parked up by the camp. We have to hope to hitchhike. What is it, 5?
Yeah.
5 miles to the town to make it in church by 4:30, and it is my phone's not on.
Oh, okay.
But we gotta make it there in less than an hour.
Man, nobody wanted to pick us up. I even held out a $5 bill, which I never do, but I don't know if it's Montana's bad for hitchhiking or we were just on a bad stretch or maybe we looked rough. We made it to church with about 60 seconds to spare and met somebody there who wasn't doing anything. It was cool to give us a ride back to the launch.
And even stopped at the supermarket so we could load up on all of our groceries from here to Great Falls.
On an earlier leg of this trip, I was backpacking, 1,636 miles from the Pacific Ocean all the way to the Jefferson River. And I was very concerned about weight. I was trying to hit 120 calories per ounce, 5,000 calories a day if I could, but on this trip, I don't care. We're in a canoe, and the weight does matter, but not nearly as much as it did when I was backpacking. That guy from church drove us back to the river from the supermarket, and we picked up our canoe from the RV folks who had agreed to hang on to it.
They really hooked us up.
Yeah.
They let us charge our phones. They gave us water bottle refill.
Meat.
They gave us sausages to take with us from an elk, and they also had this bolognese sauce that we put on our pasta instead of the canned Alfredo that we packed out. So
It's kind of like a goulash.
it was good. It was good.
We spent the morning on the bank of the river doing some maneuvering with the flights to get Andrew home early. He had a couple of clients call and cancel, so he wasn't going to have work for his guys for the next week. We'd be flying him out of Great Falls instead of a later point like we had originally planned. The water slowed down as we came towards the Canyon Ferry Lake, a massive reservoir with a hydroelectric dam at the end of it that we would be negotiating for the rest of the day today and the following day as well. Paddling in still water just isn't as fun. We weren't making as much progress, and it felt like shoveling wet dirt instead of gliding through the water and listening to the smooth tempo of the river pass by.
All right.
You ready now?
What?
You ready to go now?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. It's as far as the eye can see, dude. This lake is massive.
We spent the hour staring at a landmark, in this case, a solitary tree that we just watched get slowly closer. Emphasis on the slowly. We really weren't going that fast because there's no current in this water, and it looks like the horizon is right there, but it takes hours and hours to get to, as opposed to the quick bends of the river that we pass in just a few minutes. For a minute there, it looked like the lake was threatening to have a tailwind, and I put up the sail to make the most of it. but nothing came of it. We crossed Canyon Ferry under total human power.
All right, how far do you think we went just now on the lake?
I'm gonna say we guesstimated it to be 3 miles, so I'm gonna say 3 miles.
3 miles from that little...
Yeah.
3 miles?
Yeah. Talk to me nicely.
You want to know the real number?
What is it?
7.2.
Yes!
Yeah, dude, we did a nice little line, and I don't know, we're about a third of the way there.
We're third. We're
almost exactly a third of the way there.
1/3 of the way there.
Ah, dang it.
We took dinner with the sunset and grabbed the next decent spot. It was a late start getting all the logistics of the flight sorted, but the good news is I have a lot of brothers. So I booked my other brother a flight to come out here and join me to replace Andrew after he left. The next day was going to be a big challenge. A lot of open water. Actually, entirely open water. First the rest of Canyon Ferry Lake, and then a portage around Canyon Ferry Dam.
Bit of a downhill right now, so we're jogging on the portage. It's a 1.64 miles. We're gonna make good time if we keep running.
We made pretty good time, 55 minutes for the whole portage. Once we were down at the other end of the dam, we pushed off of the dock, and it was all the open water of Hauser Lake to get to the following portage after that. It was another day of mental tests, another day of staring at a landmark in the distance and trying to make as straight a line as we could to it, and working our way towards it without the help of a current. We went down to a minimum of water to try and save weight, and reduce the drag we had on our canoe to speed up the process a little bit. You may wonder why we're packing out drinking water if we're in a river to start with, but this river has too many heavy metals in it to drink, so we don't risk it.
Portage number 2 of the day. It was really challenging to get it out, but we're on pavement now, so who's complaining? Not me. We get to see the dam in action. We're walking over the top of it right now, and we'll get this pig done.
We launched in the outflow of the dam on the other side, with the slightest bit of current to carry us for the first few miles past the dam. It was a pretty area. I'm glad that we finished here instead of on the lake. There were fishermen below the dam, as there always are, and one of them asked me if my drone could see fish. He wanted to know if there was a trout near his line. I'd never thought to use it for that purpose before, but it did actually work. I flew my drone right over where the trout was, and he cast right in front of it.
We didn't stick around to see how things worked out for him. We found a spot just down from the dam, across from the railroad, so we didn't have to listen to the train rumble along all night. And we both heaved the canoe way up so that if the dam released a bunch of water, it wouldn't get carried away. See, there was no tree to tie it off to.
We each had double servings of pasta and ham that night, excited for the day to be over. The next day, our fortunes changed. Yes, we were still technically on Holter Lake, but it was a narrow lake and looked like a river even if it didn't have the current to prove it. Plus, we'd be going through the most scenic area of Andrew's time with me, a place called the Gates of the Mountains. We even started to get wind as we were coming into the gates, and I had my first real chance to use this sail. Or Andrew did anyway. He was the one up there doing all the African engineering to figure this thing out. There was a demo video, but it was only set up for if a person was in a canoe alone. If there was a second person, the problem was having the sail high enough so that their body didn't block the wind, but forward enough on the canoe that it could actually pull us. I liberated this branch from a dug fir that we could use as a mast. It wasn't totally straight, but it would do for us.
We're actually making progress, and we can eat too, because there's no current. There's no current in any of this water, but we do have a tailwind, so we're making the most of it. That's the sail that I peeled off of that dug fir, and Andrew here got it all rigged up so that we can go without any hands.
I was in the back, so it was my responsibility to make sure we were going in the right direction. That tailwind was pushing us pretty good, though. I turned on my GPS to record a track to see just how fast we were going, and at one point we were making 9 miles an hour. It didn't last long, though. We came up to a massive, ugly oxbow in the lake, and we had the ambition and the wheels to portage around it, so that's what we did. In spite of their high rating, 450 pounds, they didn't last. We got a little bit crooked on this trail, and I guess too much weight went down on that weld because the wheel went sideways, and we had to carry the rest of it by hand. The wheels would be no good to us for the rest of the trip.
As you can see, it's gone. You know, our water jugs weren't even full. Our gear is maybe 100 pounds, and the canoe is about the same. Max, we were at 300, and this thing's still, it's gone. So we're gonna need a new cart.
We negotiated the remaining leg beyond the oxbow without the benefit of a tailwind, and the portage without the benefit of working wheels, although Andrew had the bright idea of pushing sideways on it while I pulled forward, and I can't blame him for being upset with me. He had wanted to carry the gear in 2 trips across the oxbow, and I said that it would be fine just to do it in 1. But he wasn't upset with me, even though he had every right to be. And that's why traveling with someone like him is great. He has an indomitable, good attitude, and I love that about him. I apologized to him, but what more could we do? We still had to get the portage done, so we got it done. We filled up our water bottles down at the campsite where we launched, and then paddled past dark to get somewhere on public land where we could spend the night.
It's late. Interstate 15 is over there on the other side of the island, and then that's a cattle ground on the moon side of the river, and there's a road behind it. So islands are neutral ground. This will have to do for the night. If you look at that flag, you can see we're going straight into the wind, which makes sense because yesterday we had a tailwind and nice weather, and today we've got a headwind and clouds. So our trip is balancing itself out. Andrew is taking over navigation today because my phone went down to 1% and then died from editing videos last night. And we've just passing Craig right now, and we've got 4 more days to Great Falls where the Great Portage starts.
These are the Pine Island Rapids, right past Craig. It may look like Andrew's just trying to keep his feet dry by staying on the rocks, but really there's deep pools right next to the shore, followed by these boulders poking out. You can't walk directly in the water because it's too deep, and you can't take the canoe through it because there's boulders poking out that'll skin the bottom right off of this thing. We chose the slowest and safest option of walking it with a leash. We're leapfrogging each other to get past these rapids. When I came to a sketchy point, he would go around, and then when he came to one, I would go around and take it off of him. And in this way, we took turns getting through, and there was plenty of sketchy. It's not that I don't like whitewater. It's just that we're not equipped for it. Yes, our stuff is waterproof, but if our canoe capsizes and all this stuff scatters, it's all going to float down the river to who knows where. The process did take a long time, but it was worth it to have all the junk on the other end of the rapids that we started with on this end of the rapids. Plus, when we both sit in the canoe, it weighs about 400 more pounds than it does when we're walking beside it. With that much more weight, it displaces more water, sits lower in the river, and scrapes up against more rocks. This isn't an aluminum canoe. It's not the toughest thing in the world. It is light, and I do like that about it. But it doesn't have the same durability as it would if it was metal, so we have to be careful about how many rocks we scrape up against. Once we got to the bridge, there was a decent spot to climb up and scout out the river ahead, a high point on an abandoned railroad track. So I jogged along it to see what we had ahead of us, planning mentally a route that we could take and then relaying it to Andrew, having him repeat it back to me so we could paddle it out. We leashed the canoe a ways through the worst of it, the nasty eddies and the white water and the boulders sticking out, until there was a spot where I thought we could launch from.
I think we're good if you want to get in here.
Either I read the water wrong or I relayed the instructions wrong, but when we came into the spot where it was going to be a little tricky, where we had to swing one way instead of the other, we went the wrong way. We played it even safer through the rest of the messy water. The shallow stuff, the rocky stuff, didn't matter. I was just going to walk it the rest of the way instead of trying to plan a route and getting the bottom scraped by rocks like I did in that first rapids. The rest of the day was gray and sad. I didn't take any footage of it because there wasn't much to remember.
The bright spot was the horses who came into our camp that night. That was pretty cool. We had horses at the place where we took lunch the following day as well. These ones were more friendly. We cut up one of our last apples to feed to them, but they didn't want it. I like being around horses. I'm not interested in buying one right now or anything, but I am fascinated by them and how perfectly they fit with the mission of men. I think if there was one thing I would go and see if I had a time machine, it would be the first horse getting tamed. We hung out there for a while. The day before, there was nothing to do but paddle because there was no sunshine, and I think this day we appreciated it all the more. So once the sun came out from behind the clouds, we were fine to just sit there and soak it up for a while. Plus, the river was actually moving. It wasn't going to stay like this all day or into the next day either. As we approached Great Falls, there's hydroelectric dams there that slow the current and then stop the river. It was a warm and peaceful day, a big contrast with what we went through the day before. And I was starting to already mourn the loss of my traveling companion having to go home. We were quickly approaching Great Falls, and it was from there that he'd be catching his flight out of here, away from the river and back to Michigan. What he took me through was a slow but noticeable change in terrain. Here we're in the flats of Montana, the foothills where we can still see them beyond the smoke of the wildfires that ripped through this state in the late summer. But we're out of the Rockies. We passed through the last of them through the gates. Gone are the high peaks of the Continental Divide, the canyon walls of the Jefferson Valley, and the Rocky Mountains of the upper Missouri. I came into the mountains on my 4th day on this trip, and now I'm nearly at 100 days, and I'm finally starting to leave them. I'm in some foothills now, and yes, it's still higher elevation compared to where I'm going, but around me, I can see the mountains are fading, that I'm coming into something different. A transition in this trip, and I'm glad my brother has been here for it. I like the way he puts it. Whenever we went around a bend and we couldn't see a range of mountains or peaks anymore, he would say we had buried them because we would never see them again. It's one thing to look at a map and see that I'm crossing the country and I'll be going through a little bit of everything. And it's another to have someone out here with fresh eyes to remind me of the changes when they're happening, to make sure that I don't miss them.